I made a video that talked about the pfSense installation, VLANs, interfaces, network interfaces, the Avahi, Bonjour, and ZeroConf reflection, and kind of lumped it all in together. And oh, thank you. No, I don't want to update right now. I lumped it all in together. I don't think there was a problem with that, but there's actually a little bit more on the Avahi and the Bonjour side that I kind of discovered today in a lot of testing and sort of banging my head up against the wall. And it turned out to be one of those problems where it's like, I cannot believe that I didn't think of that, you know? It's one of those things where it's like you kind of know better, but until you dig around and actually basically have it handed to you on a platter, you know, until you do that, you're kind of like, I don't know what's going on. I've tried everything and it should work. It's still not working. So today I had one of those moments, and it's kind of funny because I just did the video on how to set up the Avahi and Bonjour reflection on pfSense. And today I was setting up Avahi on pfSense. The key difference, though, between what I was doing today and what I did the video on is that what I did the video on, if you take a look, and by the way, this is the pfSense install that I've done in VirtualBox. I did a whole video on that, how to do that. So this is it running right here. Like the pfSense web GUI that I'm logged into here, right here, is actually just, you know, running on my MacBook as a virtual machine. So nothing too crazy there, but the difference here is that if you go to firewall and you go to rules and how we've got this set up is we basically have, you know, LAN net can go on any port, any destination, you know, any destination port on any gateway. And we have these pretty much, you know, it's kind of the, for home use, it's kind of the way people normally set things up. That way they're not having to open ports all the time. And even a lot of times in like K-12 environments or even small business, that type of thing, they're not really worried about locking every single port down and then opening every port that needs to be open one at a time, or doing a block of ports. They're not really that worried about it, and they don't want the administrative overhead of having to, you know, constantly update or add ports that might need to be opened. But in the more real world, when you get into more complex situations, you can't really just leave all ports open and block, you know, a few specific ones that you're like, well, I know I don't want traffic going out here. So, and by the way, the two differences there, you've probably heard of whitelisting and blacklisting. So if you whitelist, if you take the whitelist approach, then that basically means that nothing is open until you go into pfSense and you basically, you know, whitelist that port, and by whitelisting it, you're actually coming here. I think there's a mosquito in here. I'm sorry about that. That's really going to be annoying. So if I act like I'm going crazy with my hands or whatever, I feel like I got bit by one earlier, and I think there might still be one in here. So anyway, whitelisting. If you come into pfSense and you block all the ports, and then you say, I only want, let's say, 443, 80, and 53, then that basically means that every other port that people are going to try to get out on this interface, if they're connected to the LAN interface, that if they try to go out on 443 or 80 or 53, then they'll be good to go. They'll have no problem getting to the internet. But if they try to get out on 444 or 5353 or 8080 or any other random port or email or SSH or FTP, it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to get out on those ports because we haven't come in and explicitly made mention of those ports here. And so the default for pfSense is when you look at the rules, if it doesn't match, then it doesn't go through. Okay? So we basically have this LAN interface set up where 10.0.0.6, whatever device is on that IP address, can't go anywhere. We've blocked everything there. We did have that set up for 10.0.0.5, but that's disabled, so I think that's actually my IP address now on my MacBook. But anyway, like I said, this is the difference, is that if you're networking this way, if you're firewalling this way, then what you'll notice is even if you allow all traffic from one interface to another interface, and let's say the other interface is your Apple TV network, if you do that, you're going to notice even with the Avahi reflector and the Bonjour reflection services, you will have weird problems. You'll see a list of devices, and then the list of devices will disappear, and then you might be able to connect when they reappear for a few minutes, and then it'll disconnect, and you're just going to have all these kind of weird, strange things happening. So after almost literally banging my head against the wall for an embarrassing amount of time, I kind of started to realize that there was something going on with the firewall, because I could restart the Avahi service, and as soon as I restarted Avahi, it would work for about 5 or 6 minutes. And excuse me. So it would work for 5 or 6 minutes, and then all the devices would disappear. And I mean all of them, like all 15 or 25, however many there are. There's a bunch at the site that I'm doing this work on. And every single one of them would disappear. And it was kind of like, what is going on? You've got to be kidding me. But I did notice that there was one particular network, let's say the gaming network, and it did have a rule. I'll go ahead and just create a rule that is similar to what I noticed. Source, we're on the gaming network net and any, and it's basically allow gaming network LAN to all. Okay? This is what I noticed, is that on the interface that I had gaming network, or whatever the network was on that interface, when I had that network that was set up for allow all to all, basically, that particular network always could see the Apple TVs. It always was fine. Whether Avahi had been restarted or whether it hadn't, whether the computer had been on for 10 minutes or an hour, you could come right here and click on the Apple TV and the whole list would show up. And so it was like, okay, it doesn't make any sense, because these other networks, I explicitly gave permission for them to be able to go 100% onto the network that had Apple TVs, and it still wouldn't connect. So I did a little digging around, and I was able to find through Wireshark what was happening. And for those of you that don't know what Wireshark is, it's this really cool program. And I have a little example here of some fun little things that I captured just a few minutes ago. on my wireless network adapter, and this was exactly what I saw on site. I saw my source IP address of the machine that I was on, and then I saw the MDNS protocol, and then I noticed that it was going to 224.0.0.251, and it just seemed like it was, over and over and over again. It was the MDNS. I guess the broadcasts were going to or coming from this IP address, this 224.0.0.251, and so it kind of, for me, sort of clicked right there that if I had an interface that was only allowed to go out on the network where I determined and said that it could go out, if I didn't explicitly say that this IP address here, if that was blocked, then of course that would cause a problem. So what I had to do, oh man, what I had to do, and it was a very easy fix. And so what I may do here actually is go ahead and rename some of these things so that we can, let's see. Yeah, instead of printer, let's call this the Apple TV network. Ooh, it's a whole VLAN with nothing but Apple TVs on it. Doesn't that sound nice and secure? So what we'll do, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I'm not, it's been one of those days. So we'll apply the changes there, and now we have Apple TV network, and it is on the 10.0.200.1 interface. And we'll go to firewall, and for the Apple TV network, we will say that anything can go anywhere. Apple TV network allow all. Okay. So we want our Apple TV network. We trust the devices on that network to go out to the outside world and download your updates and stream YouTube and download stuff from Apple and whatever. We kind of trust those devices to do that. Now, that's probably not the most secure thing, to be quite honest, because you're relying on Apple to make sure that these things can't get hijacked and download a bunch of malware and spread it on your network. So that's probably why it's a good idea to have these on a separate VLAN. That way, in case something happens, at least they're on a different subnet. Now, it doesn't really help the fact that we just set up this rule right here, allow all to all. So that's kind of the lazy way to do it, is just say, yeah, sure, let the Apple TVs go wherever they want to go. The more secure approach would be to actually define where the Apple TVs can go to the outside world and on what ports. You could even specify external IP addresses that they would be able to contact, and that would lock it down pretty well. So for this example, let's just say we're going to be, we're not that worried about security. We're going to leave this Apple TV network sort of open, okay? So if we go back to the gaming network, and we've got the gaming network is allowed, all to all, whatever, that's fine. And then we go to the guest network, and it's the same deal. And we go to the LAN, and it's the same thing. Where you're going to run into problems, like I said, is if you don't have this rule enabled. And now you're specifying that only traffic on 443 and 80 and 53 are out on this network. I can tell you right now that even if you come in here and say something like this, let's say you add a new rule and you say, oh, I want my LAN clients and workstations to be able to contact the Apple TV network and work with Apple TV. So, so you would think, all you have to do is come in here and say any coming from the LAN network can go to the Apple TV network. And we'll even call it that. Allow all from LAN to Apple TV network. Okay? And you do have to have this, by the way. I'm not saying that you don't have to put this in, but I'm saying that this will only get you 75% of the way there, 90% of the way there, which in our world, 90% means not working, and so it might as well be 0%, right? So this is an important step. You do have to do this. You have to allow your LAN clients to get to the Apple TV network. But if you leave it like this, this is where you'll run into the problems, because you'll go here to services, you'll go to Avahi, and you'll make sure it's enabled, and you'll make sure that it's running on all interfaces. Let's see. Yeah, let's make sure it's running on all interfaces. And all these options look great. They look wonderful. You'll hit save. And then you'll go to services over here. And you'll start Avahi. And as soon as it starts up, you'll see this great big list of Apple TVs that you can choose from. And you'll think you just did the greatest job in the world. And everyone's so happy that, yay, we can connect to the Apple TVs from any network now. It's so great and wonderful. And you may even send an email that says, hey, everything is great. And when in reality, 10 minutes later, it's not. So what you have to do is go to firewall, go to rules, go back to the LAN, and like I said, you need to build off of this rule right here. So we're going to copy this rule, and we're going to say that the LAN network can go to a single host or alias, and it's going to be 224.0.0.251. Apple, and then we'll say allow all from LAN to Bonjour. Okay, 224.0.0.251. Coming from the LAN net, going to that single host. Save. Apply. And now, if you look at your rules here, you're good to go. Okay? Your Bonjour and your Apple TV devices are going to work without you having to fall back to one of these default allow LAN to any rule. Okay? And so this is the much more secure, this is the much better solution, because now you're restricting your LAN network to communicating with Apple TV network and also communicating with the Multicast, the MDNS. And you're not allowing all of the clients on this network to just basically shoot out to the internet wherever they want to go and download whatever they want, and be totally totally exposed. So if you follow this procedure, then that will get the LAN network set up. And if you want your guest network to also be able to communicate with the Apple TV, and you don't want to leave this in place, this basically allow guests to go all places. Sounds kind of dangerous, right? We would come here and disable this rule, say, we don't really want to do that anymore. We don't want our guests, if anything, guests that come and let's say maybe get on our wireless network, maybe this VLAN is connected to the wireless side of things. We wouldn't want to allow guests to have sort of like free reign and go do whatever they want on the internet. Right? We would kind of want to lock that down to maybe just 443 and 80 and say, look, you can surf the web, you can check your email and stuff, and that's going to be about it. As long as it's webmail. We're not bringing in the emails through, POP and SMTP and IMAP and all that fun stuff. We're not doing that on our network. Okay, if you want to do that on your phone or whatever, that's fine. Use your data plan or go home, but don't be bringing all your emails onto my network. Okay, so we've disabled that rule, and now we basically would just go create the same thing. And I'll actually show you a shortcut. We already know we want those two rules, right? So why come in here and have to do them all again? If we just go to firewall rules, we know where the rules are that we want to copy. So you just go back here and you'll hit copy. And then we'll just change the interface to the guest network. And then we'll say anything coming from the guest network can go to the Apple TV network. And of course, we want to change our description here to reflect that this is the guest network. Save. Apply. Okay, so we're one step there, one more to go. We'll go back to LAN, and now we want to copy this 224.0.0.251, the Bonjour. Okay, so we'll just do the same thing. We copy it, and then we change the interface. We change the network, and we change the description. You don't have to put a description there if you don't want to. I think it's good practice for people that may take over after you, or a few months down the road or a year down the road. Let's be honest, you may not remember exactly why you had this stuff here. So the description can come in extremely handy. And it just helps document your work, and it helps you if it's you coming back, and it helps the next person if it's the next person coming back. Okay, so don't be one of those guys that just throws it all in there and doesn't really say why or how or what's going on. You just kind of do your thing and don't document. Don't be that person. So basically, with this setup that we have here on the guest network, what we have is possibly a wireless network that if guests are to join and they get on this VLAN, then they will be able to see our Apple TVs on our network, on the Apple TV network here, okay? And they will be able to connect to those and stream whatever they want to stream. And that's it. It's not providing any internet access for them, which could be extremely useful. If you're like, well, you know what? I need people to be able to show a PowerPoint on our Apple TV equipment, but I don't want them getting online here. I don't want them going and streaming a bunch of music and consuming bandwidth here. I just want them to be able to communicate with our Apple TVs. Well, this would be the setup for you then. This would be only allowing access to Apple TVs and stopping everything else. Now, if you wanted to be nice, if you wanted to say, sure, the guests can get on the guest net, and maybe we'll let them get on 443 HTTPS. Yeah, you can come over here and copy it and say, let's make this on the guest net. And let's make this guest network here. And the destination anywhere on HTTPS, okay? So I mean, you've already seen the rules of allowing HTTPS to basically anywhere. But let's say there was one particular server. Maybe it's a web server that you know of where you have other things hosted, and you want your guests that have connected to your guest network and are using your Apple TVs. Let's say you want to also allow them to click on a link and maybe in an email or an article or something that you've already given them. And let's say that you know the IP address of that web server. Then when they click on that link, you could basically say, well, I still don't want them getting to the internet and doing whatever they want, but I do want to allow them to go to this one website. And so you can see right here, single host or alias. So you could say, I want them to go to whatever.com. All right. On 443. And you can save that. Oh, that cannot be a domain. It can't be a fully qualified domain name. It has to be a host. So what they mean here is like a host that's actually like a host name. So single host or alias would be something maybe on your internal network. So let's see. 10.0.0.150. Okay, so let's say you've got a single host and it's running on 10.0.0.150, and you want them to be able to get out of the guest network and reach this one web server, and that's it. Then you could do something like this. And by the way, this IP address can be whatever you want it to be, and you can actually do multiples of these rules, or you can even open up a whole network segment if you feel like it. You could say, I think they should be able to get to 8.8.0.0/16. It's anything in that subnet, have at it. So it's really cool how much you can customize this. And guys, really, like, the sky is the limit. The sky's the absolute limit. I mean, you could spend, days and weeks and months just going through all the features and all the options and configuring your firewall, making it more secure, adding more features, and just making it what you need it to be. And that's the thing, is I can make a video every day for the next 10 years, and there's no way that I would hit everyone's exact situation with the interfaces that they need, the VLAN tagging that they need, the firewalling and the security and DNS and DHCP servers. It is totally up to you as the network engineer or as the safety officer. It is totally up to you to know where these things need to be and be able to determine the trade-off between safety, security, and ease of use. Obviously, if you are setting something like this up for a small business, you wouldn't want to have to whitelist every single website that your clients are going to. That would be annoying. You would get fired pretty quickly if they had to call you every time and let you remote in and say, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I can let you go to that website. No, especially if it's like a flower shop or something like that. I mean, give me a break. It's not like it's the U.S. government or the Secret Service or something where everything has to be locked down. So there's trade-offs between ease of use, security. You just have to find that balance between the two of those and figure out what's going to work best for you. But also, don't be lazy. Don't totally open it up and say, well, if I open it up to everything, then I'll never have to touch it again, because that's definitely not true. You may go a while and not have to open up or change anything on the network, but eventually that's going to come back and bite you when you get hacked into or whatever, or your clients are all the workstations are constantly infected with whatever and using up 100% of the bandwidth all the time because a massive botnet has built behind your pfSense firewall, which if you just turn everything off, all of a sudden isn't acting much like a firewall now, is it? So anyway, that is how you would get the Apple TVs and the MDNS to actually play nice and work. And if you do this, then you should be good to go. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment and post below. And the subscribers that I have, I've never met you guys, but I think it's pretty cool. And I've been doing this for several years now, and I've decided to kind of start sharing this information out because I like to. I think it's fun to talk about. I think there's a lot to be learned from me, but also by me. I think I have a lot of learning to do, and anyone that's looking to get into this field needs to know right off the bat. And anyone that's been in this field will tell you that it's a constant learning field. You're constantly learning and updating, and things that people knew 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Certain things are either totally dead, not even anything that we do anymore, or they've evolved majorly over time. And some things are still sticking around. Like if you had learned, for example, IPv4 network addressing 20 years ago, then that's something that still comes in handy today, obviously. But there's so many things, software. It would be sort of like learning Windows 95, I guess, and saying like, well, I know Windows. I doubt there's very many jobs available today where if you still knew Windows 95 and Windows 98 and that was it, that that you would be hired on by them. Now, it's actually kind of funny because I know someone that works in an environment where they do a lot of like CNC machining, and they've got a lot of the circuit board printers and stuff like that, where they actually do, I believe, run like Windows 3 or Windows 95 maybe. Those are sort of the later machines. But to replace these machines, you're looking at tens of millions of dollars, and so it's easier just to keep up maintain the hardware that's running Windows 95 that run these machines than it is to try to totally redo the machine. So anyway, like I said, there's constant knowledge. You're constantly learning, but that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, and if you can evolve and stick with it, and it's something that you like doing, then I don't think you'll have any problem with this field, because it is a rewarding field if you can find the right job, and the jobs are out there. Don't let anyone fool you and say, oh, IT is such a terrible sector to get into. I wouldn't say that's 100% true. I think I've definitely seen and heard some horror stories about people that have been taken advantage of and worked 70, 80 hours a week after week, and they just get totally burnt out. And those are the symptoms of either a bad workplace or a bad manager. But don't let that type of story, or even if you've experienced it once yourself, don't let that one experience sort of turn you off from the field. Because there's more out there, and there are companies out there that if you're experienced, if you're knowledgeable, if you can get to work and your car's not breaking every day and you're using that as excuse, an excuse every day, oh, I can't get to work, my car broke down, that might work one time a year, but if in your first 4 weeks of work you've already used it 6 times, I doubt they're really considering paying you any more money, and they're probably already looking for your replacement. So anyway, I enjoy doing it, guys, and I appreciate the subscriptions and the comments, and I'll do what I can to make sure that these videos continue on, and I'll do what I can to make sure that they're somewhat watchable. Thanks a lot.